This week, China took its first formal steps towards severing government ties and communications with Australia following a message from Beijing on Thursday that all dialogue at a political level would be cut off for years. Chinese importers of Australian fruit, meat and honey have reportedly already decreased or dropped orders in anticipation there'll be more sanctions on Australian products. And to help us understand where we are right now in Australian-Chinese relations is Professor Joe Siracusa, political analyst from Curtin University. Professor, good to see you. I've read some pretty scary headlines over the past week. I guess the main question is, how close are we to war with China?
Well, look, I don't think China and the United States, and by implication Australia, I don't think they want to go to war, but chances are, in terms of, it's zero. They have no intention. On the other hand, the chance of a miscalculation or an accident is about 60 to 75%. So we could easily find ourselves at war. And China knows that Australia plays a crucial role for America in this neck of the woods in terms of housing bases here, and perhaps airplanes and other things up north, etc. And China is very annoyed with Australia, but I think for all the wrong reasons. I mean, Australia has been talking about the drums of war recently, when I don't know what drums of war they're talking about. The Shanghai Communique, which no one seems to talk about in this country, has governed the one China policy on Taiwan since 1972, when Henry Kissinger, Richard Nixon, Chairman Mao, and Zhou Enlai signed up. So that's been the sort of the operating mode. And now when we talk about going to war over Taiwan, I think the Australians ought to just sort of maneuver a little differently here. They ought to sort of ask themselves, what can they do to serve in terms of peace? That is, they should be interlocutors. I think Australia should ask the United States right up front, do you repudiate or do you still support the Shanghai Communique? And the second thing they should do is go to the United Nations General Assembly and say, will anybody in this room, and there are 193 nations there, will anyone in this room support the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Taiwan? Now, this is a trick because Taiwan's not a member of the United Nations. So, let's find out why we're in this conflict. And the other thing, too, is Australia's going to have to start thinking why China is a threat. It's not a threat because it's a rising power. That's a very lazy answer for a lot of lazy people. China is a declining communist party. It's been going for 72 years as leader of China, though a little longer as a party. The Soviet Communist Party lasted 74 years, and the Chinese Communist Party leadership is terrified. They're going to go the way of the Soviet Union. They don't want a regime change in their lifetimes. They're trying to figure out how to galvanize the country behind them, and they're doing that through this glorious unification of Hong Kong, Taiwan, etc. But keep in mind, the more we threaten China over Taiwan, the more we guarantee the destruction of Taiwan, because China doesn't have to invade Taiwan. I mean, they can just wait for it to fall. I mean, it's well within their gravitational pull, and they're close enough. It's only 100 km away. And all the planners I know in Pentagon say we'd lose a conventional war with the Chinese because they have closer lines of communication and missiles. And so the war would quickly go to the nuclear level, in which case there's no winner. So I think Australia ought to start taking a more nuanced approach to this and ask the United States straight out, are we still working with a one China policy vis-a-vis Taiwan? Yes or no? Otherwise, Australia is wasting its time and placing itself in danger.
It's really interesting what you say about the UN and how that may be key to Australia sort of rolling back from this situation. How likely is it, do you think, that the Australian government will go to the UN over China?
Oh, I think they should have done it about 6 months ago. Look, it's a very easy thing. I mean, you're going to ask the world authority to look at where the COVID virus is coming from. You could also ask the General Assembly. Now, I know the Security Council can veto any decision to come to the aid. But if you find out that there are only about 14 countries in the world that think that Taiwan is a country that they're going to come to the aid to, that is, that has territorial integrity and sovereignty, then that's fine. Otherwise, the idea that Australia might be fighting alongside the United States alone. And look, no one's going to invade Australia. No one's going to be coming through the Sydney Head with combat troops. All they're going to do is just choke Australia by blocking the sea lanes of communication, and Australia will die a long, lingering death. So, it's not going to be dramatic. On the other hand, Australia has an important role to play. Small to medium-sized powers always have this ability to be interlocutors in the quarrels between the great powers. And, at the end of the day, the great powers do what they can do because they're great powers. And small powers do what they must do. So I think Australia ought to use all the leverage it can, and it has a lot of leverage in international circles, particularly at the United Nations, and ask people, put out a resolution, is anyone going to come to the aid of Taiwan? And if we do nothing about it, this thing will mature over a period of time. And, that's what the one door, one China policy is. It's for China and Taiwan to settle. But if the Chinese think that we're going to declare war over them about their approach or about what happens in Taiwan, we're literally assuring China, the Taiwanese, of a conflict they cannot win. So, it's sort of having an unintended consequence. A lot of people, a lot of the war hawks in this country think it's a great idea to defend Taiwan, but they don't have to.
Well, Professor, unfortunately, we're out of time, but it's great to get your insights today. Professor Joe Siracusa from Curtin University, thanks so much for joining us on Weekend Live.
Thank you.